Hello there. Good afternoon. Um, I hadn't made a hockey video for some time, so I figured may as well. I just stopped making hockey videos because I didn't like how Adidas had taken over the jersey manufacturing thing, and I had my own. Well, some might label them as conspiracy theories as to what was going on over there. Anyway, um, I haven't sat down and watched an entire game yet of any series, but I am catching all the highlights and seeing what's going on. Right now, Dallas is up on Vegas, which I'm kind of surprised. Let's see how long that lasts. Um, I'm surprised by that. I thought Vegas would really lay into them. So far, that's not happening quite yet. We'll see. You know, as you can tell from my attire, I am kind of leaning towards the Florida Panthers. I would like them to be successful in these playoffs. And so far, they have had a modicum of success. They're in the conference final. They beat two difficult teams to beat, being Boston, the number one President's Trophy overall. They beat them quite well, I thought. They played very well against them. They weren't at first, but they really picked up the slack. And this Panthers team is really, it's a tough, rugged team. And those are the type of teams that win the Stanley Cup. Um, yeah, it was a lot of people were taken aback that Boston lost because Boston has had some success in the more recent history. I mean, obviously they beat Vancouver in 7 games to win the Stanley Cup in 2011. I don't think anyone's forgotten about that. I wasn't as offended by that as I was when New York Rangers defeated the Vancouver Canucks in 1994. Um, so anyway, Florida, they defeated the President's Trophy Boston Bruins. And that was, from a wild card team and a total embarrassment for the Boston Bruin fan base. Um, and then Florida went on to play Toronto. And a lot of Toronto Maple Leaf fans wanted Florida to play against them. Well, they won, so you got what you wished for. I'm not the first one to say it, but that's what happened. Again, I watched Game 5. That was a very rugged game. Anyone who was in that game will be sore after that one, or would have been sore. They did have a few days respite, but that was hits all around, people getting, spun around. Um, as far as the controversial goal that Riley may or may not have scored, Steve Dangle said it best. He said it could not be proven that it crossed the line. Some people argued, well, Bobrovsky's pad was over the line, therefore it was a goal. I didn't see anything definitively showing that part of his pad was behind there, and you can only see the puck crossing the line after the play had been called off. After that was it. And the goal didn't stand. But what I found to be more unfair for Toronto was that 2 minute delay of game penalty, because that really looked like it was a floored player. I think it was Barkov who flicked it over the glass. That's what it looked like to me, and nothing much equated from it. The Florida Panthers put on some pressure. No goals were scored in that overtime from that power play. I have noticed that the goals that were scored against Boston, a lot of them, and a lot of the ones that have been scored against Carolina so far, have been true sniper goals. They've been very well executed and just really, they weren't the greasy garbage goals that they had to get from Toronto. I think Toronto so far has been the toughest opponent that Florida has had to play so far. Toronto didn't want to lose this one. I know I'm not going to win in many popularity contests by going with Team Red on this one, but I'm just not a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. I actually look, if you're from Toronto or Ontario, I got nothing against you, but to be honest with you, I don't like Ontario. I've never been there before, but politics and things like that. I just don't like Ontario. I don't like Toronto. Wouldn't want to ever live there. You'd be lucky if I ever got on a plane to go there, let alone actually live there and, all that kind of stuff. And again, if you're from Ontario, whatever, you don't choose where you're born, man. And even if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, I'm not hating on you for doing that. But that doesn't mean I have to root for the same team as you. And given that I live in Canada, that's not going to win me a lot of friends. No. Florida, been nearly 30 years since they've had any real impact in the playoffs. I don't even care that might be one less team that hasn't won the Stanley Cup, and the Canucks might be in that unfortunate position of being a team that has not won the Stanley Cup, and that pool of teams that have not won the Stanley Cup gets smaller. There have been teams over in the last few years that have won the Stanley Cup whom beforehand had abysmal seasons that didn't really accomplish too much. You take Washington, you take even Tampa Bay, St. Louis. Tampa Bay, to an extent, they had won a Stanley Cup before. But, even one Stanley Cup's not, okay, you had one good year. They're nowhere near dynasty status. They're not the Chicago Blackhawks, not the Detroit Red Wings, not the New Jersey Devils under Martin Brodeur. And, one Stanley Cup's great, and you can cling on to that idea, but the idea isn't it to win it every year? Wouldn't a team aspire to win it as many years as possible? This is a different sport, the CFL, but what about the Montreal Alouettes? When they were in their prime, they didn't want to give up that Grey Cup. They wanted to keep winning it. And, the Chicago Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup a few times. Okay, one season was kind of short, so, they still were the best team in that league, in that season. And they deserved to win the Stanley Cup. There's a reason their names are all on that. I'm happy that the New York Rangers lost. I wanted them to lose. I publicly stated that I wanted Toronto to lose. In fact, I said that they were the last team that I had on my list of teams I didn't want to win the Stanley Cup. And a lot of people got confused and went, "What, you don't want a Canadian team to win?" I was rooting for Edmonton, but, it didn't quite pan out. So now there are no Canadian teams left, so a lot of people are bummered out. But there are still a lot of Canadian players, and that's what part of the NHL is that most good players are Canadian or Russian. That's just the facts. Not that many of them are American. You could argue that there have been notable Americans that have been good, like Mike Modano, Patrick Kane, and so on. But they never really were Sidney Crosby status. They were never as good as him. And Patrick Kane's career is he's in the twilight of his career, unfortunately. And, he's still a relatively young guy. Theoretically, if you got put on another good team, but that's part of it, you're only as good as a player as your team is. McDavid can't do it all himself. Or Draisaitl. He did well. But, the team, especially the goaltending, wasn't very good. And it needed to be better. But you take old Bob from the Florida Panthers, man. He's done some good things already. And I think Florida will beat Carolina. They may not, and I won't be that offended if they do. I do not have a Carolina Hurricanes jersey, if you must know, but it wouldn't irk me too much if Carolina did, in fact, beat Florida. At this point in time, I don't think they will, but all remains to be seen because nobody knows what goes on from the outside looking in. You can sort of see plays and sort of get a tempo and a feel for a game, but you just don't know. So anyway, I wanted to make a hockey video. It's not the most informative, statistically forthcoming in this video. It wasn't the intention of it. So anyway, I will leave it at this, and I will talk to you people at some other point in time. Thank you. Good night. Well, yeah, I guess it is turning into night, isn't it? Although it's still bright outside because it's summer. Anyway, I'll talk to you people later. Have a good one.